interruption, please. Deputy Coppinger, you have just 7 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Minister, I've put this to you before. We are in the midst of the biggest housing crisis that this state has ever seen. And your plan today proposes yet more focus on private developers to resolve this, the same market that caused the problem in the first place. But now you've introduced a new element, or you've made it crystal clear, that public land, the most precious way we have of resolving the housing crisis right now, is to be gifted by councils to these private developers. An absolutely incredible thing to do in the midst of a housing crisis, up to 75%. So, as well as money up front for Part 5s and a range of other rewards, you never listen to anything we have to say, but would you listen to the CEO of NAMA? Because what he talked about, he said it's not that housing is not profitable for private developers, it's just not profitable enough. That they are sitting, €20,000 profit apparently isn't enough for them. So what you're proposing to do is now reward them for their hoarding and their strike of capital that they've been engaged in. But this time given over local authority land. Just to start with the poverty of ambition in this plan, because we're hearing that this is the biggest investment in yonks. Alan Kelly used to tell us the same over there. This would not even bring us to the 2007 levels of building. And yet we now have, as we know, a housing waiting lists of a multiple of that. In 2007 and 2008, the bar charts are there in your own report. You can go and look at them. We were building about 5,000 local authority or housing association houses, and acquisitions and Part 5s were pretty much at 9,000. That's your plan, 9,000 houses a year for social housing. An incredible paucity of ambition at a time when leprechaun economics tell us that we have massive growth rates in this country. Also, the poverty of ambition in relation to the 200,000 vacant houses. My reading of it is that 1,600 is to be acquired. Maybe you could clarify that. But local authorities are to be ordered by you now to hand over land to private developers to develop it for trickle-down housing that they might get off them, to the order of 25 to 30% is indicated. And why? Because we have to follow. Even though we have the land, we have the money, because the Taoiseach himself, or sorry, the Minister for Finance has told us there's no shortage of money. We've got €5.4 billion, the deputy behind you was asking, sitting in the Strategic Investment Fund. We could use that for the provision of public housing, but we're barred by EU fiscal rules. And Minister, have you done one thing to ask the EU for a derogation because of our housing emergency? Have you made any communication to Brussels on the matter whatsoever? You've been well aware that this is the case. Instead, we read in your report that, scandalously, the department has spent 2 years, while the housing crisis has been raging, trying to find a workable off-balance sheet model to get around this quandary. So it is very simple. We have the land, we certainly have the labour, we've many unemployed building workers, we have the money, but we are not allowed to do it publicly. It has to involve the private sector, and it has to be self-financing. It's capitalism, it's the neoliberal impediment that's preventing us resolving our housing crisis. So I just wanted to deal with the ISIF fund of €5.4 billion and the NAMA fund of €2.4 billion cash reserves. That's €8 billion that we could be spending on social and affordable housing. And yet the state cannot use that to build housing. This is the problem we have. Let's simplify it, because you're announcing about 10 different schemes today, but that is the problem. And it's absolutely outrageous. Now, you've announced today as well a new type of housing estate. The term mixed tenure is being used. Like the term mixed tenure, it's like motherhood and apple pie. Everyone is in favour of diversity. You know, we all want to be different mix of people. But the Minister is constantly interrupting.
Well,
you can't help
you're
yourself.
asking questions as
Yeah.
well. Could I just simply say there's a certain allocation of time here, and people are going to keep interrupting.
Well, can you add on a bit for the
interrupting with people who want to contribute.
25% to 30% will be social housing. This is on public council-owned land. And 75% will be people on private mortgages, or this new term, affordable rental. What is affordable rental? It's 70 to 80%, maybe you'll clarify, of the market rent. Now, so if you live in Dunleary, 80% of 18 or 2,000, which is what's being paid in many parts of Dublin, it's still 12, 13, 1,400. That's not an affordable rent. The idea that we would call that affordable is laughable. The people in Tyrrellstown, who live in houses, by the way, not apartments, are paying €1,500 for very small houses. An affordable rent under your scheme for them would still be it's not an affordable rent, Minister. We need to raise the eligibility for social housing so that people like bus workers, etc., can apply for it, but we also need to provide people with affordable mortgages. Schemes like the council did. I have an affordable mortgage with Fingal County Council from when I was a teacher 12 years ago. That allowed me access a house. Give other people that same opportunity. I had an email last night from a family whose rent is going up by €100. Now, that wouldn't be a lot to you, but for this family, their monthly income is €1,700. They're working. There's 5 of them, 3 children and 2 parents. They live in a 2-bed, and their rent is going up to €1,200. So they'll have to live on €600, those 5 people, for a month. Have you anything in the plan for them? Not one solution at all. What we need is emergency legislation to ban repossessions, something that at least the Housing Committee did ask for, a moratorium on repossessions, and you haven't done it. To ban evictions, you haven't. How many months do you need to be aware that it's obvious that we need rent controls? That the private rented sector is the source of homelessness and the source of poverty, and yet you're planning on entrusting 65% of the social housing provision in the state still to the private rented sector. A hugely expensive way of providing social housing. We need to, just finishing now, Ciarán, we need to return to using public land, public funds and building a range of affordable and social housing for people to buy or rent.
Thank you, Ciarán Margaret. I now call on Deputy Maureen.